There comes a moment in life when you begin to feel out of place in rooms that once felt familiar. The conversations feel shallow. The laughter feels distant. The values no longer align. And quietly, a disturbing thought emerges. Why do I feel so alone, even around people I've known for years? Carl Jung believed this experience was not accidental. He saw it as the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Individuation is not improvement. It is not success. It is not self-optimization. It is separation. As long as you live according to expectations, you belong. You fit into families, friendships, communities. But the moment you begin listening inward, questioning beliefs, roles, and inherited identities, something changes. Your inner world shifts before the outer world can follow, and that gap creates loneliness. Jung understood that psychological growth pulls you away from the collective, not because others are wrong, but because your soul no longer fits the old shape. This is why growth feels isolating. You didn't reject people. You outgrew patterns. Your values deepened. Your awareness sharpened. Your tolerance for pretense faded. And while others stayed where they were, you moved inward and forward. This separation is painful because it is misunderstood that we are taught that loneliness means failure. That disconnection means something is wrong with us. Jung rejected this idea completely. That he believed that becoming an individual requires a period of psychological solitude, because you cannot discover who you are while constantly adjusting yourself to remain accepted. Growth demands distance, and distance demands courage. If you feel lonely during this stage, it is not because you are broken. It is because you are no longer asleep. Most relationships are not built on truth. They are built on persona. Carl Jung used this word to describe the social mask we wear, the version of ourselves shaped to be accepted, approved, and understood. The persona is not fake. It is necessary. It allows us to function in society, to belong, to survive, but it comes at a cost. Relationships formed through the persona depend on consistency. You are expected to stay the same, to play the role that others recognize. When individuation begins, the persona cracks. You stop laughing at jokes that feel empty. You stop agreeing with ideas that feel false. You stop performing versions of yourself that no longer fit. And this is where tension appears. People don't say, "You're becoming more authentic." They say, "You've changed." What they often mean is, you no longer play the role I'm comfortable with. As the persona dissolves, relationships built on it weaken. Not because anyone did something wrong, but because the foundation was conditional. Jung believed this collapse was inevitable. The more authentic you become, the fewer masks you can tolerate, in yourself and in others. Conversations lose energy. Silence stretches longer. Emotional distance grows without arguments. This is why the loss feels confusing. There is no betrayal, no dramatic ending, just a quiet realization that something has ended. And because the ending is subtle, the grief feels invisible. You miss people who are still alive. You feel guilty for drifting away. You wonder if you're becoming cold. Jung would say, you are becoming real, but reality is less crowded than illusion. And when the persona falls away, not everyone can follow you beyond it. Disconnection rarely happens all at once. It arrives in waves. Carl Jung observed that psychological separation unfolds gradually, often in ways we don't immediately recognize. The first wave is internal. You begin to feel misaligned. Conversations drain you. Old dynamics feel heavy. Nothing dramatic has changed, but everything feels different. This is the moment when your inner world outpaces your outer life. The second wave is relational. Others sense the shift before you. Explain it. They feel your presence change. Your reactions soften. Your enthusiasm fades, and they respond, often unconsciously. Some push harder for the old version of you. Some withdraw. Some subtly criticize your growth. You're overthinking. You've changed. used to be more fun. These comments are not attacks. They are attempts to restore equilibrium. The psyche resists disruption, especially when it threatens shared identity. The third wave is silent loss. Relationships don't end in conflict. They dissolve in absence, fewer messages, less urgency, longer gaps between conversations. And this is where the pain sharpens, because there is no clear reason to grieve. You feel lonely, but you don't feel justified. You question yourself that am I isolating myself? Am I becoming arrogant? Should I go back to how I was? Jung warned that this moment is the most dangerous, not because it hurts, but because it tempts regression. It invites you to abandon growth to restore comfort. Wear the mask again. To shrink your awareness so you can belong. But individuation does not reverse. Once the inner door opens, it does not close quietly, and the loneliness you feel is not rejection. It is transition. One of the most painful aspects of outgrowing people is that no one is at fault. There is no villain, no betrayal, no moment you can point to and say, this is when it ended. And yet, something has been lost. Carl Jung understood this grief as uniquely difficult because it lacks permission. You are not mourning a breakup. You are not mourning death. You are mourning distance. You still care. You still remember. But the connection no longer reaches you in the same way. This creates guilt. You feel selfish for changing. You feel disloyal for growing. You feel ungrateful for wanting more depth. And so, many people blame themselves. They try to revive old dynamics. They force enthusiasm. They return to familiar roles. But Jung warned that this kind of loyalty comes at the expense of the soul, because what you are grieving is not people. You are grieving versions of yourself that can no longer exist. This grief must be honored, not as regret, but as recognition. You are allowed to miss people without returning to who you were. You are allowed to love from a distance. Growth requires psychological death. Old identities dissolve so deeper ones can emerge, and every death, even a necessary one, demands mourning. If you deny this grief, it turns into bitterness. If you rush past it, it turns into numbness. But if you allow it, it becomes grounding. Jung believed that grieving consciously is what prevents hardening. It keeps the heart open, while the self transforms. You are not betraying anyone by becoming yourself. You are honoring the truth that relationships change when consciousness deepens. After the old connections loosen and before new ones appear, there is a period Jung described with unsettling precision that he called it the interregnum. A time between identities, a psychological no man's land. The old life no longer fits, but the new one has not yet taken form. This is where loneliness deepens, not because people are gone, but because belonging is suspended. You no longer resonate with the collective, yet you have not found your own circle. There is no mirror to reflect who you are becoming. Jung believed this stage was unavoidable for anyone who individuates seriously, and he warned that most people abandon growth here. Why? Because the interregnum offers no validation, no applause, no reassurance, no certainty. You are left alone with your thoughts, your doubts, and your emerging values. This is why it feels like a desert. Nothing seems to grow. Nothing feels affirmed. And yet, this is where the deepest transformation occurs. Without external confirmation, you are forced to discover inner authority. You stop asking, "Who should I be?" and begin asking, "Who am I when no one is watching?" This solitude is not empty. It is gestational. The psyche reorganizes itself in silence. Values solidify. Boundaries sharpen. Purpose clarifies. Jung believed the self is born here, not through achievement, but through endurance. If you try to escape this stage, you return to dependency. If you stay, something irreversible happens. You become internally grounded. The loneliness does not vanish, but it changes quality. It becomes quieter, less desperate, more reflective. You are no longer lost. You are forming. Loneliness is often misunderstood as a flaw, a sign that something is broken, a reflection of inadequacy. Carl Jung saw it differently. Loneliness is a signal, a compass pointing toward growth, authenticity, and self-discovery. When you outgrow the people around you, it is not rejection. It is a natural consequence of deepening consciousness. Your mind and soul are expanding, and the world around you hasn't expanded at the same pace. This dissonance creates a tension that feels like emptiness. It feels like failure. It feels like isolation. But Jung reminds us, this is the path of wholeness. Every moment of solitude, every quiet hour without companionship, is an opportunity to strengthen your inner life, to define your values, refine your vision, and cultivate clarity that no one else can provide. Loneliness is a mirror of your inner evolution. When you feel disconnected, you are being called to trust your inner authority, to honor the inner voice that asks, who am I beyond expectation, beyond approval, beyond comfort? This is the moment where courage meets awareness. Most people flee this signal. They cling to shallow relationships. They compromise their growth. They pretend the internal call does not exist. But those who endure discover something profound. Loneliness is not the enemy. It is the gateway to psychological freedom. It separates the dependent from the autonomous, the superficial from the authentic. It is painful because it is honest. Jung would say, if your life feels quieter, emptier, or lonelier, do not fear it. Do not rush to fill it. It is the universe's way of showing you. You are becoming more yourself, and that signal, however uncomfortable, is more valuable than all the approval in the world. After enduring solitude, after facing the desert of individuation, something remarkable begins to appear. The connections you thought were lost start to feel different. The people who resonate with your depths start to appear, slowly, almost imperceptibly. Carl Jung called this the discovery of fellow travelers. These are not numerous. They are rare, but their presence is profound. They recognize what is true beneath the surface. They do not respond to your persona. They respond to your authentic self. This is why friendships built on shallow familiarity fade, and why the ones that remain feel almost miraculous. Jung observed that once you grow, you no longer need everyone to approve. Approval becomes secondary. Depth becomes the filter. You might meet a person who listens without judgment, who appreciates your silences, who respects your boundaries. These are your fellow travelers. They appear at the edges of your life when you are not seeking validation, but cultivating integrity. And the beauty of this stage is subtle. You are no longer lonely because you are lacking. You are lonely because you have outgrown the ordinary. But in that very loneliness, you make room for the extraordinary. Jung reminds us that these connections are not accidents. They are a natural consequence of alignment between inner and outer life. The more authentic you become, the fewer superficial bonds remain, but the deeper and more meaningful the true ones become. This is the paradox of growth. Loneliness precedes connection. Scarcity precedes abundance. Silence precedes resonance. And when you meet these people, it is unmistakable. There is recognition. There is understanding. There is a sense of home in a world that has been alien. These fellow travelers validate nothing. They simply mirror what you already know. Your authenticity is worth the journey. As we reach the end of this journey, remember this: you are not broken. You are becoming. The loneliness you feel is not a flaw. It is a signal, a sign that you are moving beyond conformity, beyond the familiar, beyond the shallow comfort of collective expectation. Carl Jung taught that growth is often isolating. It demands courage, patience, and honesty. It requires leaving behind patterns, roles, and even people who no longer resonate with your evolving self. This is not a punishment. It is the natural consequence of psychological maturation. At first, the solitude feels harsh. It can feel endless. It can feel as if you are moving through a desert. But the desert is fertile. The space you create allows for reflection, clarity, and the cultivation of your inner authority. As your soul organizes itself, you begin to recognize fellow travelers. The rare, authentic connections that honor depth, integrity, and truth. You begin to understand that what feels like loss is actually preparation. Loss is the pruning necessary for your authentic self to emerge. So, when you feel isolated, do not fear it. Do not resist it. Do not rush to fill it with familiar comfort. Embrace it. It is part of the process, part of becoming. You are shedding the layers that no longer serve you. You are discarding false approval. You are letting go of shallow bonds. And in that space, you discover something essential: your authenticity, your integrity, your inner freedom. The loneliness is not empty. It is alive with possibility. You are not alone because you are broken. You are alone because you are growing. And that growth, painful as it may be, is the most profound journey you will ever take. In the words of Jung, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You are not broken. You are becoming.